Right now, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about some legislative affairs, specifically House Bill 5, and we're going to visit with District 28 Representative Jared Bauman. He's the representative of parts of Jefferson County. Representative, welcome to the show. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. Pleasure to be here, sir.
Yeah, please call me Larry. I'm a very informal guy, so I'll probably refer to you as Jared once in a while too. So please do that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
The thing is when you get close to the General Assembly, I'll talk to a variety of people. What do you think is going to come down the pike? What could be controversial? What could get a lot of attention? I'm not sure. I wouldn't necessarily have thought the Safer Kentucky Act or House Bill 5, which it's formerly known as, would rise to the very top. Although I think it gets a lot of attention because you're dealing with issues that can be very emotional for people. Are you surprised at the kind of attention it's gotten, support or otherwise?
Yeah, I have been a little surprised. I think the impact that crime has on Kentuckians across the state really unites us behind supporting Kentuckians with the highest levels of public safety, security, and protection possible. But I do understand that it is an issue for some folks on the other side of the aisle that believe that maybe we shouldn't hold criminals accountable, especially violent criminals, to the highest account possible.
It's got a lot in it, though. I mean, I guess my first thought it really addresses a lot of issues. Any consideration to breaking up House Bill 5 into maybe 2 or 3 other pieces of legislation? Because there is a lot in there.
No, we have not considered breaking it up. We deeply believe that the size of the bill is really commensurate with the public safety and security and protection needs of the state and of the 4.5 million Kentuckians we serve. So we certainly plan to keep it intact all the way to the governor.
So give us the highlights of what you think are the most important points in House Bill 5.
I think some of the most important points really have to deal with violent crime and really addressing that in our state. According to the Council of State Governments, Kentucky is one of only three states in the country in which violent crime rose last year. And so the 3 strikes law is a very important piece of the policy. It's going to ensure that we hold persistent violent felony offenders accountable, and any violent experienced criminal under this law after they commit 3 violent felonies would spend the rest of their life in prison without the possibility of parole. And these are very serious and heinous crimes, Larry. We're talking about murder, attempted murder, rape, carjacking, things of that nature. And we don't think that people that continually demonstrate that type of behavior should be in our communities to reoffend. So that's really one of the most important pieces of the policy. There's others in there that are very important as well, like Madeline's Law, which is going to regulate bail funding organizations and what they're able to do. Jake's Law is in there as well, which is going to crack down on those folks fleeing the police. I know as the pendulum has swung so far to the left when it comes to law and order in our country, fleeing the police has become a priority for FOPs across the country. And so we certainly want to use this policy to not only support Kentuckians, but also support those on the front lines, our first responders and law enforcement officers. So we also have a provision in there that deals with the murder or attempted murder of a first responder, and again, ensuring that we hold those criminals to the highest account possible.
We're talking with District 28 Representative Jared Bauman out of Jefferson County. We talk about this a lot, specifically with the 3 strikes. Some concerns that some of our listeners have had is that the criminal acts that qualify are vaguely defined and could be abused. So I guess as far as the legislation is concerned, how strictly does it define which criminal acts qualify under the three strikes judgment? So I mean, is it strictly defined? I mean, is there some interpretation there that's allowed to maybe a sliding scale a little bit? So kind of how strictly defined? I'll ask you the question this way: how strictly defined are the acts that would qualify as part of the 3 strikes?
Yeah, they're very clearly defined in statute, and again, while this is a punitive measure for someone that commits 3 violent crimes or 3 violent felonies, I should say, there's also a lot of love in this bill as well that's going to help support those people leaving incarceration with the proper resources to ensure that they don't reoffend. So we look at holding criminals accountable in this legislation, but we also look at ways to reduce recidivism by ensuring we have the best reentry programs in the country to help folks become contributing members of society when they exit incarceration, so they don't come back in for their second violent felony or for their third violent felony before they hit that qualifier of life in prison.
Jared, one of the components of this legislation that gets a lot of attention is the references in dealing with homelessness in our cities. Kind of what does the bill say regarding people that are sleeping on public property and those kinds of things, and how does it deal with that?
Yeah, Larry, I'm really glad you asked that question because I think I got a lot of response from probably a lot of your viewers when some pieces aired on local TV there. And I just want to make it very clear that it is not a crime to be homeless or unsheltered in the state of Kentucky today. And it will not be a crime to be homeless or unsheltered in the state of Kentucky after we pass House Bill 5. The genesis of those provisions were to protect the rights of businesses, private property owners, and the general public as well. But the way the legislation's been crafted, it's actually going to help nudge the homeless population that we have in our state towards the treatment that they need, because we've learned that around 70 to 80% of these folks are either addicted or mentally ill, and so we want to help ensure that they get the treatment they need and support that they need, which doesn't necessarily happen today.
Good. So maybe talk a little bit more specifically. So it would only criminalize, I guess, maybe lack of a better phrase, homelessness if they're like sleeping like in front of a place of business or in by a doorway, or maybe they're camping, or they throwing a tent up in someone's yard or something like that. I mean, maybe living in a town. So maybe explain a little bit about how people who are homeless could be affected legally, and where are some areas where they could sleep, for instance, where they would not be in violation of this law.
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's just use a for instance, if you will, a hypothetical, I guess. If, let's say, I own a hardware store and somebody wants to set up camp in front of my hardware store, I can ask them to move, and if they refuse to, then you can call the police and ask that they handle it. Now, the circumstance, the officer would handle that however they see fit. Obviously, we're not going to tell law enforcement how to handle that situation. But the only time the law would kick in is if they refuse to move. And so there will be designated areas that the local governments will assign for camping. And so that will help ensure that the advocacy groups, recovery services that want to help this population will know where these folks are and can adequately support them. It'll also require that those areas have, at the very least, some type of sanitation facilities to provide drinking water and restroom facilities for the folks that choose to camp outside.
Yeah. We're talking with District 28 Representative Jared Bauman out of Jefferson County. Talk about the Stand Your Ground law. It's my understanding that this legislation will expand it to apply to property owners that are trying to get homeless people to leave their private property. Explain, is that true, first of all, and secondly, how's it going to be implemented?
Yeah, so it wouldn't be a whole lot different than what we have today. You have the right to protect what's yours and to protect yourself if you need to. But there is no, we're not sanctioning the use of force beyond what's commensurate with the circumstance or situation. So I know there were a lot of pretty wild narratives thrown out there by some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle that it would be okay to shoot someone stealing a bag of chips in a store or something of that nature. That's just preposterous, and that wouldn't be the case. Mm-hmm.
We're talking with Jared Bauman. He is a representative from Jefferson County, District 28. I was reading an article, I think it was the Herald Leader today, was where there were some critics of the legislation as it pertains to the Housing First program. So how does House Bill 5 address the Housing First programs?
Yeah, so it protects housing first. I would call it housing only, actually, not housing first, because it does not require that they seek any type of treatment for their substance abuse or mental illness should they have that. That's why we prefer the housing to be connected to some sort of treatment, because housing only has not worked. The homeless population is exploding across our state and across our country. So I know that there are a lot of people that have invested a lot of time into the housing only model, but it's not working.
Does it prohibit state and federal funding going to housing program? The Housing First program? I read in one of the stories that it does.
No, it does not, and that's part of the disappointing part of this, Larry, is that I guess people run with narratives and stories that are just simply false. And I'm learning that, my friend, as a freshman representative, that's part of what happens. But it absolutely does not prohibit federal funds from flowing to that housing first model as they do today.
Is that aspect of being a legislator, has that been the biggest surprise for you in your first term? That dealing with the level of information out there that you believe or is confirmed to be not true about a particular piece of legislation? Does it surprise you about how much spin there is out there about stuff?
It has to some degree. I don't know that that's the biggest surprise. But it certainly has, and you know, I should qualify that by saying I certainly don't believe that it's done intentionally in all cases. I mean, maybe in some cases it is, but I think in some cases it's just a lack of understanding, you know, of what's actually in the policy, and that's okay. But I'm certainly wide open for folks to come to me and meet with me, call me to ask questions to clarify the policy. I'm always happy to do that instead of just running with the story that's just patently false.
I have to ask you, if that's not the biggest surprise, what is the biggest surprise?
Well, yeah, I would say the biggest surprise is just how hard it is, how hard the work is here in Frankfort. You know, you don't, the average citizen in Kentucky probably doesn't really have an understanding of just how difficult it is to change and write new law, which is a good thing. It should be that way because, you know, we're making and changing laws that impact 4.5 million Kentuckians, and so it should be very difficult, and it certainly is. And that's probably the biggest surprise to me, is just how hard it is to pass legislation.
Representative, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on, and we'd love to have you back again soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it as well.